Hi, I'm Ted Field with In-Depth Travel, and welcome to the second part of my top 10 Granada videos. Be looking for the third part coming out soon. If you missed the first part, go and check it out as well. Please, if you like what you're seeing, click the like button and the subscribe button. Thank you again for joining me, and I hope you enjoy this video. Number 7, Sacromonte. A trip to Granada should always include a visit to Sacromonte. It is located to the northeast of the Alhambra. Most tourists associate Sacromonte with cave dwellings and a rich flamenco nightlife. In the 15th century, so-called gypsies began arriving in Granada. They were given the name gypsy by the Europeans because they assumed these foreigners were from Egypt. However, the Roman people, as they are now called, have their roots in India. They began migrating from India in the 8th century and settled in Muslim-controlled southern Europe, which at that time included most of Spain. Their homes were practical and cheap, dug out of solid rock, cool in the summer and warm in the winter. A visit to the Cave Dwelling Museum is well worth your time. It is a remarkable glimpse into the personal lives of the close-knit Roma people. Sacromonte is also famous for its dazzling flamenco shows. These cave spectacles are intimate and passionate. They feature a type of dance which is a cross between Andalusian flamenco and the barefoot dances of the Roma people. It is a unique experience and one that should be scheduled in advance. Check online for times and dates. This could save you an hour-long wait later on. And now for a little history lesson. In 1492, Ferdinand and Isabella finally conquered Granada, which ended the Moorish rule over Spain. At that time, Sacromonte was known as Monte Valparaiso. Many Moriscos, Muslims who were forced to convert to Christianity by the crown, began settling in Granada from all over Spain. They were mostly unwelcome, and they began to look for a way to legitimize their place in Spanish society. They got their opportunity with a 16th century discovery under a rock on top of the mountain. The discovery was sheets of lead, the so-called lead books. They were found in caves at the top of the mountain under a large rock. These books state that St. Cecil, the first archbishop and patron saint of Granada, had been martyred by burning on that very mountain in 65 AD during the rule of Roman Emperor Nero. These books were written in a strange language the Moriscos called Solomonic, a hybrid between Arabic and Latin that miraculously the Moriscos were able to translate. The book stated that Cecil, and hence the first Christians living in Spain, were actually Arab. The Sacromonte Abbey was founded in the 17th century to commemorate the site of the death of St. Cecil. After the discovery of the books and the ashes of the martyred saint, Monte Valparaiso has been known as Sacromonte, or Sacred Mountain. The symbol of the abbey is the Star of Solomon. It is the home of a beautiful museum and an important library with over 25,000 volumes. The supposed remains of St. Cecil and the oven in which he was burned are preserved by the abbey. The tour of the abbey ends with a visit to the holy catacombs. There's an audio guide that will aid you on your tour. Several important chapels and relics are in the cave. The caves are close and dark, so watch your head. One of the first small chapels you come to is dedicated to Our Lady of the Caves, a small, simple room dug out of the rock with a delicate statue of Mary in the opposite niche. This statue is a copy of the original held in the museum. The most important relic contained in the catacomb is the cross of San Juan de Dios, St. John of God. During the 16th century, he carried it with him as he walked the streets of Granada, asking for alms for the poor. We'll learn a lot more about him in the next episode. One chapel is set aside for the rock, that venerated rock under which was found the lead books. Legend says that any woman who kisses the rock will be married within a year. But back to the books. Interestingly enough, in 1594, two Moriscos, Miguel de Luna and Alonso del Castilla, were living in nearby Albacete. They came across some old texts engraved in lead under a big rock, and as fortune would have it, they each read Solomonic. Since the Solomonic script was indecipherable to Christian clerics, they depended upon Miguel and Alonso as their translators. The translators claimed the books recorded the prophetic teachings of the Virgin Mary. She gave instructions for St. James the Great and St. Cecil to organize a mission to evangelize Spain. She stated her love for the Arabic people and their language and promised them guardianship over the city of Granada. It was later found these books were forgeries and were actually created at almost the same time they were discovered. But the ploy worked for a while. There's a painting in the museum that shows St. Cecil being healed of his deaf muteness by Jesus. You'll notice on the ground beside him is a turban revealing his Arabic origins. The conjecture is the translators were trying to soften the blow for the exiled Muslims in the face of Christian authorities and persecution. Return to Granada via the Camino del Sacromonte, taking a moment to enjoy the breathtaking views of the Alhambra and the city in the distance. This is the route followed by the pilgrims during the Feast of St. Cecil on February 1st, a great chance to celebrate the culture of Sacromonte and the local Roman people. Once back in the city, stop at a cafe for a glass of wine and free tapas. After that hike, you deserve it. Sacromonte is a great place to spend a morning and early afternoon. I was a bit unlucky because I was there right after the COVID pandemic, so there were no flamenco shows happening. I had to get these photos from a friend of mine who went a year later, but he said it was absolutely one of the best things he did while he was in Granada. I have also read that it's a place to be careful. There are a lot of pickpockets. That wasn't the case, obviously, when we were there. It was pretty much deserted. I did love going up to the Abbey, and I thought the story about those lead books was fascinating. By the way, if you were like me and don't know the difference between a monastery and an abbey, a monastery is typically a place that is based upon the teachings of one individual person. It's for people to go who want quiet contemplation, to study or learn or be closer to God. An abbey is sanctified by the church and is led by an abbot or an abbess. So in other words, you can have a Buddhist monastery, but you can't have a Buddhist abbey. Number 6, the Alcaiceria. Just a 2-minute walk east of the cathedral is the Grand Bazaar of Granada, called the Al-Qaiseria. Granada's Alcaiceria was built in the latter part of the 15th century, but the name Alcaiceria goes all the way back to the mid-500s AD and the rule of Roman Emperor Justinian. He granted the Muslims the exclusive right to sell silk throughout the Eastern Roman Empire. They honored him by calling all markets within the Muslim world Al-Qaiseria, or the place of Caesar. When Ferdinand and Isabella defeated the Moors in 1492, they took over the operation of the Al-Qaiseria. It covered a huge part of central Granada. This map from 1787 shows the present-day market is about 1/8 the size of the market up until the 19th century. At that time, a fire broke out and completely destroyed it. It was rebuilt in what is called the Neo-Moorish style, a style meant to copy that of the original architects. But unfortunately, nothing that remains is original. The market is open every day except Sunday from 11 a.m. to 8 p.m., and the entrance is free. It can get very crowded, especially around noon and again at 4, so I would suggest shopping early or late. Remember to watch over your pockets and purses. This is a place that is known for pickpockets. There are a lot of goods to choose from: beautiful lanterns, exquisite leatherwork, colorful printed fabrics, exotic ceramics, as well as jewelry and spices. If you're looking for a special souvenir or gift from Granada, this might be just the place to find it. Definitely visit the Alcaiceria when you're in Granada, but if that's the sort of shopping experience that you want, I may have a better place for you. Not far away from the Alcaiceria, look for these two roads, Elvira and Calderaria Nueva. Calderaria Nueva gently slopes down the Albaicin hill. It's also a market similar to the Alcaiceria, but I think it's a little bit more of an authentic shopping experience. The shops are divided by cafes, so you get this delicious aroma of pastries, tagine, tea coming out of the cafes, wafting onto the street while you're doing your shopping. Now, I can't vouch for the quality. I can't tell you if it's any better or any worse. I just think the shopping experience is better. When the street dead ends into Elvira, make a right. Elvira is lined with Moroccan cafes and tea houses. Please stop in and have some delicious food to sort of top off the experience. You won't be sorry. I'm in the wine business, so whenever I travel, I love to try the local wines. And I'll be honest with you, wines from Granada are a little tricky to find. Now, it's easy to get Riojas and Ribera del Dueros, but finding a wine from Granada was a bit tricky. But on Elvira, at the opposite end of the street, is a shop called Al Sur de Granada. Al Sur de Granada is a find. Not only do they host their own wine tastings, but they specialize in local wines, local cheeses, and produce. We picked up a bottle of Garnacha and 3 delicious local cheeses. One was a white cheese with chimichurri spice. The second was a blue goat cheese, which I'd never had before. And the third was an aged goat cheese. All were delicious. I highly recommend Al Sur de Granada. Number 5, the Cathedral and Royal Chapel. The Granada Cathedral is located due west of the Alhambra in the city center. This part of the city is dotted with tree-filled squares and lined with tapas bars. Certainly more touristy than the adjacent Realejo, but no less charming. Be sure to visit the San Agustin Market nearby, filled with delicious provisions from seafood and ham to bread and olives. A great place for a nice lunch and a bottle of wine during your explorations. Now back to the church. Right after Ferdinand and Isabella had reconquered Granada in 1492, they decided to build a cathedral in the city. The Grand Mosque had been used for religious services, but it had quickly become too small. So by 1501, the plans for the new building were started. However, actual work didn't begin until 1523, and the cathedral was not completed until 1704. That's over 180 years. Because of the amount of time it took to complete the building, the Cathedral of Granada is an amalgamation of different styles. The apse, or east end of the church, was the first to be built. It is ringed with buttresses and characteristic of the Gothic style. The facade is Renaissance. It was designed by Alonso Cana, the so-called Michelangelo of Spain. We'll hear more about him later. And as you will soon see, the interior decoration is Spanish Baroque. Here's a plan of the Cathedral Complex. The entrance, marked with an X, is on the left side of the facade. The cathedral is open Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 6:15 p.m., and on Saturday and Sunday from 3 p.m. to 6:15 p.m. The price to enter is €5, and that includes an audio guide. It's not hard to be amazed by the grandness of the interior. You'll be struck by its pure whiteness. The embellishment lies only in the surface decoration. Notice the piers supporting the vault. Not a single column, but 4 attached columns make up each support. The effect is bold and elegant at the same time. Standing in the nave and looking down towards the chancel, the effect of all this whiteness becomes clear. The apse seems to glow with a heavenly golden light. The entire church is ringed with chapels, each one incredibly beautiful on its own. Please take some time to walk around the church and enjoy them. I've picked out a few to talk about a little later on. As you walk up the nave, stop in front of the magnificent twin organs. They really deserve special notice. These organs were constructed in the 18th century. This was when organ and choral music were at their peak. Here's a way to tell Spanish organs from Northern European ones. Notice the trumpets sticking out like cannons at the base of each organ. This is in contrast to Northern European organs, which only have vertical pipes. One of the most beautiful parts of any cathedral is called the crossing. This is where the nave and the transept, which forms the T on the cross, intersect. Walk along the nave a little farther until you're standing just in front of the chancel, then look up. It's an incredible scene and a perfect photo opportunity. If possible, have a seat right in the center of the nave and look towards the chancel. This is the part of the church reserved only for the clergy and the choir. It contains the altar and is considered the holiest part of the church. The beautiful blue dome is suspended like a night sky tent. It rises 148 feet from the floor of the church and has a diameter of 72 feet. There's a lot to be admired from this location. First, the silver baldachin that marks the spot of the high altar. It's a modern addition and was completed in 1926. It's the work of José Navajas Parejo and was commissioned by the Duke of San Pedro Galatino, who is buried in the church. Just below the dome are 2 rows of stained glass windows. They date from 1561 and show the life and passion of Jesus Christ. The arched paintings just below that, by Alonso Cano, were commissioned to honor the Virgin Mary. Cano, who is also buried in the church, faced a very difficult problem with these paintings. They're very large and meant to be seen from the floor of the church. The perspective had to be adjusted and the colors brightened to compete with the windows above. A little bit more about Alonso Cano. He was born in Granada in 1601. His father was a woodcarver and decided to move to Sevilla in 1614, where there was more artistic activity and possibility of work. In 1616, Alonso joined an art studio where he met the genius Diego Velázquez, and from him learned the art of painting. While in Sevilla, he also studied sculpture and architecture, becoming an artist and earning the nickname the Michelangelo of Spain. Alonso Cano died on September 3, 1667, and, as he requested, he is buried in the cathedral's crypt. This is a monument to Cano near the nave, a fitting tribute to a true Renaissance man. As I mentioned before, small chapels completely encircle the church. Their space is for quiet contemplation and prayer, so as you're walking around, please be respectful. I've chosen 2 to talk about, but there are many more just as beautiful. On the left side of the nave, just before the transept, is the beautiful chapel dedicated to Our Lady of Sorrows. Many consider this to be the most beautiful chapel in the cathedral. The rich brown marble comes from the local Lanjarón quarries. This chapel is considered the height of Andalusian Baroque, and you can see the Moorish influence in the stonework. In the center is the white marble image of Our Lady of Sorrows. At the very top, try and make out the depiction of Veronica's veil. As the story goes, seeing Christ on the way to Calvary, Saint Veronica wipes the blood and sweat off his face. Miraculously, the face of Jesus appears on the veil. The second chapel is just on the other side of the transept. Known as the Chapel of Our Lady of Antigua, or Our Lady of Antiquity, it is completely of gilded wood. Although the style is considered Baroque, it's a type of Baroque called Churrigueresque, basically Baroque on crack. The simple and elegant German Gothic statue of Mary looks somewhat out of place, but this statue was dear to Ferdinand and Isabella, who brought it to Granada during the conquest and donated it to the cathedral. To visit the tombs of Ferdinand and Isabella, you'll need to leave the cathedral and make a left. Around the corner, you'll see the entrance to the Royal Chapel. Its hours of operation are 10 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. every day except Sunday, when it's open from 11 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. The entrance fee is also €5 and includes the audio guide. As the chapel was to be their final resting place, and fearing that they wouldn't live to see the completion of the cathedral, Ferdinand and Isabella ordered the chapel to be started first. Standing in the courtyard, notice the decorative lattice work above the door. These are the insignias of the rulers, F for Ferdinand and Y for Isabella. You enter the chapel to the left of the grand doorway. The interior is Gothic with pointed arches and ribbed vaults. An ornate gate separates the nave from the monuments. There are 2 burial monuments in the transept. The lower of the two belongs to Ferdinand and Isabella. Ironically, the higher and grander is for their daughter Joanna and her husband Philip I. Joanna married Philip, a Habsburg, and when she died, their son Charles not only inherited Spain, but also the Austrian Empire, making him the most powerful man in Europe. It was Emperor Charles who completed the Royal Chapel. Although these monuments are incredible, they are just monuments. The actual tombs of the royal family are much more humble and can be seen in the crypt. The earthly remains of Ferdinand and Isabella are contained in these simple lead boxes, but this time Ferdinand and Isabella are front and center. As you can tell, the cathedral is just full of things to see. Please take advantage of the audio guide. It makes things more immediate and more real, and it will help you to enjoy it when you know the story behind it. The Royal Chapel, there are no cameras allowed in there, so I actually got these images from the internet. Still, obviously, very worthwhile and something that you should see, but not something you'll be able to document. The city center area is a great place to stroll around, get some tapas, have a drink. The nice thing about it is, unlike other parts of Granada, it's very flat. So you can actually walk at a sort of a leisurely pace and relax. Thank you again for watching the video. Be looking out for part 3 coming up soon, and I'll see you.